So I did want to make somewhat of a follow-up kind of thought process of what I think iOS 16 has kind of been like for some of these older iPhones. And I do think that iOS 16 as a whole has kind of changed the way that a lot of these older iPhones are probably going to start working on the latest versions of software. Now, ever since iOS 11, the first couple betas, I've been installing a majority of betas on all my iPhones. And what's very, very interesting is, realistically speaking, every single time a new beta has came out, Apple has been pretty generous of the amount of features they would place on all their iPhones. You know, if a certain iPhone feature like dark mode came out, it would have been featured on all the iPhones and not just some of them. But even on some like smaller features, I noticed that really ever since iOS 12, when Apple brought group FaceTime over and they restricted it on only the iPhones that were like, I think had 2 gigabytes of RAM or more, that was something where I saw Apple kind of start shifting their ways a little bit. They started only implementing really cool, crazy cool features like those ones to the latest and greatest phones, like the iPhone 6S, the 7s, the 8s, the 10s at the time. And that was something that was very strange to me, even though, in my opinion, the iPhone 6 could have easily supported it. And now with iOS 16, that one little tiny feature has now been like increased to like tons of little tiny features that are on like every single iPhone. It's like when you start with the iPhone 13, you know, before the 14s came out, when you start with the 13s, that one got all the features, then the 12s got a little bit less than all the features, then the 11s got a little bit less than those types of features, and then the 10s got a little bit less than those, and then the 10s got like the lowest amount of features. So it's very, very weird how Apple created this sort of featureless activity kind of thing where even towards the end of it, they started restricting features again with the battery life, you know, not giving us the ability of showcasing that on the 10Rs, the 11s, the 12 minis, and the 13 minis. But then they ended up bringing that back a little bit after. So I think what the main goal of Apple is, and they really demonstrated this with iOS 16, they really want us to go ahead and make sure we have one of the more recent versions on that version of software. And even if your iPhone is supported with that version of software, and even if it is more than adequate, you know, in terms of power to sustain those types of features, Apple is probably going to restrict as many features as they physically can to make sure that you don't have as great of an experience as the latest and greatest iPhone that Apple has created. And we've seen this with iOS 16. Even with iOS 15, we kind of saw coming. This has been the biggest version, I would say, in how all these older iPhones are going to start running these versions of software. Now, I think there's some benefits of that. You know, maybe if you want to have better battery life, having less features kind of helps a little bit, but I just don't think it's that great of a trade-off. You know, I think the better features and the more features, if your phone can support it, then that'd be great. But there isn't any reason, and we saw this with Stage Manager too, with iPadOS 16. Apple tried so hard to make sure that Stage Manager was only going to be on the M1 iPad Pros, but let alone, I mean, that feature could have been supported on all the iPads. And now look, Apple has now been caught in a web of lies, and they pretty much are now supporting that feature on all the iPads out there, or at least the iPad Pros. So it's just one of those things. I just think Apple's going to try so hard to make sure that, you know, they have this laddered approach of features, and, you know, maybe they'll, you know, get by for a few years or whatever. But I do think there's going to come to a point where people are going to be like, well, why does this iPhone get this feature and literally the one right below it that has pretty much the same type of power and maybe even the same chipset now? Why did that iPhone not get that feature? So that's kind of my, you know, thought process behind iOS 16 and how it's been kind of like the, you know, ideas behind it. If you have any other thoughts or questions, please let me know in the comment section below. Hit the like button, that would mean so much, but definitely hit that subscribe button. More importantly than everything else, I love every single one of you guys. Hopefully I'll catch you guys in the next video. Peace out till then.